Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our interview tonight with Dr. Kimo Alameda. He is a candidate for Hawaii County Mayor. Conducting our interviews tonight are Chuck Flaherty and Christine Kubat. Before we start our interview, I'd like to do a brief introduction of who HULI PAC is. We are a group of grassroots community advocates volunteering our time to HULI PAC. Many of us have witnessed during oral testimonies the problem of being the minority voice, observing seated representatives voting against the āina or the majority of testifiers. The majority rule currently allows the continuation of colonial structures, corporate rule, and methods over Ike Hawaii for āina and its people to thrive. We must collectively understand the individual power we carry as Hawai'i Island residents by getting involved. Who's going to ask our first question tonight, Chuck or Christine?
Christine, you're welcome to go.
Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we're curious if you've already begun to evaluate the county administration's current department, office, and agency leaders, and if you yourself are looking at where we could see some improvement in the different directors and county heads and positions that we have today.
Yes, coming into the system as a new leader is going to require teamwork. So right now there's 20 departments and the mayor has the authority to appoint 11 of them. So 9 departments, they're selected by commission or civil service. And so on those 11 departments, I would pretty much expect all of the directors to reapply. And they have to sit well with my leadership style, my expectations. And they have to be committed to the island. This is not a 4-year vacation. You don't get to come work for the county and then leave. I want commitment. I want our directors to know the issues. I want them to love this place, be proud of this place, because we cannot have directors who will make decisions that that they won't be part of the consequence in years to come. So I'm looking for that type of leader. And of course, the deputy directors as well.
And just as a follow-up to that, there are a lot of vacant positions, even within the departments, and especially with boards and commissions. And wondering what ideas you have to fill some of those vacancies. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those specific vacancies later, but just want to hear your ideas on how you're going to be able to really fill out the administration and these different advisory roles.
For sure. Thank you for asking that. So I was the executive of the Hawaii County Office of Aging, and I understand county government. And prior to that, I worked for the state 15 years. And following that, I worked for a federal qualified health center. So I'm the only candidate with experience in 3 branches of government. But in the county, I can tell you it's a morale issue. The morale is down in the county. I got my colleagues and I got co-workers that are close to the source. And they tell me that, it's not the same. It's there's mid-managers that are not trained, I think, to provide good supervision. And so, yet along those lines, however, there's a lot of hard-working county workers. I mean, there's a lot of, good, competent, hardworking county workers that, they just need to be shown the love. They got to show, managers got to show that they appreciate it. And we got to somehow build the morale. So if you want to fill those vacancies, you got to build the morale. There's a lack of morale right now. And also there's a lack of what I would consider targeted recruitment efforts. For example, in the police department, they got rid of the High PAL program. The High PAL program was a sports program that youth like me as a kid, I remember looking up to those police officers. They were your coaches, and then when you see 60 to 80 vacancies in the police department, we've never had that 10 years ago. That's because people like me growing up, we wanted to be police officers because they were part of our upbringing. And so when you get rid of certain programs that are effective, that can serve as a recruiting tool, then you'll start to have vacancies. So I'll be looking at all of that. And part of my first 30 days is to do an organizational assessment to figure out what is the root cause of the poor morale. And then what are some key strategies to start recruiting folks to come work for the county? Because we want to make the county the employer of choice, right? I mean, that's how I remember growing up. My dad would say, hey, man, if you get a county job, you get a state job, take it. You know, you got security, you get benefits. But now people's moving to the private sector. So I want to change that. And with my campaign manager, who's Bill Brahante, the former HR director of the Roth administration, you know, he left because he also was disappointed. And so, you know, he has ideas. I have a lot of people on my team that were former Roth employees, and they left for several, you know, different reasons. But collectively, I can tell you there's a morale issue. There's leadership issues from the top, from the middle, and then there's workforce issues. And I'll hope to come in and address all of those. But thanks for asking.
Quick follow-up. Are there specific departments that you're most concerned with at this time, having, you know?
Well, you know, the tough departments, yeah, I mean, there's so first of all, you know, hats off to our county employees. I mean, you know, it's difficult working in an environment where there's not much staff to support you, right? To get your back. So I get it, you know, and they're working extremely hard. But there are reasons for short staff. And it's not just HR, you know, the process takes too long is kind of what I'm hearing. It is morale. It is putting people in places that fit their personality and such. So public works is a tough department to manage. Environmental management is a tough department to manage. Let's see, Parks and Recreation is another one that's tough to manage. You know, but this is leadership, right? So as the mayor, you got to kind of set up your organization in a way that would make most sense. So I think that we could use the EAs better. So executive assistants, like for me, I would put an EA over each department, but I would set up those departments in pods. For example, public safety, you know, police, fire, prosecutor office, civil defense, and even maybe liquor control. I would consider that public safety. I'll put an EA over that department, somebody with expertise in public safety. And now when you go human services, that's another pod, right? That's Parks and Recreation, that's housing, that would be transportation, that would be Office of Aging. I would put somebody over that department who's an expert, content expert in human services. Okay, and then there's like infrastructure, building infrastructure, that's planning department, public works, water, environmental. I'll put an expert over that, you know. So you got to use your EAs in a way that makes sense to help you organizationally, in addition to your managing director and your deputy. And then there's the pod that I call, you know, support services. So that's your finance department, that's your IT department. They support the employees. That's your research and development department. So, you know, that's your corp counsel. They should be there supporting the employees. You need an EA overseeing that, so that with content expertise that can help make that pod flow well. Right now, there's no, you know, with my psychology background, I can bring that applied psychology expertise to the organization and make sure that, you know, that it flows well. And that's why I'm excited to, you know, to come into this position, because I think I can make that happen.
Thank you. Chuck, next question.
So what do you prefer to be called, Dr. Kimo, Dr. Alameda?
Dr. Kimo, you know, Uncle Kimo.
Okay, Dr. Kimo. So getting to the voluntary positions, the people in the community who are willing to put forth their time and energy to fill boards and commissions. What we've seen is that often highly qualified applicants for positions on the county's boards and commissions are ignored. I mean, that's and the only reason we know that is because members of the county council have openly expressed frustration that of highly qualified individuals within their constituency that they know have volunteered, but they're not being put forth as a nomination. The Leeward and the Windward Planning Commissions are really good examples of that.
Yeah.
So, would you be willing to commit to nominating only qualified individuals to the county's boards and commissions who can hit the ground running versus requiring on-the-job training?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you got to define qualified. Yeah, so I don't know what the current administration is looking for in their volunteer positions, but yeah, definitely you need a basic set of competency. Okay, so that's one area of competency, but then you also have to have a work ethic. I know a lot of smart guys and women who just they don't show up for the meetings, and then you have to have a social component. Like you have to get along with folks. You cannot be just dominating the discussion, because it's a collaborative kind of discussion back and forth. Now, if you're there to monopolize the discussion for it to have it just to get your outcome, then it doesn't matter how competent you are. You're just difficult to work with. So as a psychologist, I bring that to the table too. So, I would be looking at different aspects of how you define qualified. But yeah, I agree. I don't think the county is doing I mean, they could do a better job at making sure that people are not trying to learn on the job, because that takes time. It frustrates the other members, and especially when they're being recommended by people who live in that district, like the county council reps, and who know, what's needed, and then they're being rejected. I can see the frustration. I would be frustrated too.
So would you agree that qualification would include the nominee having demonstrated a prior involvement with the board or commission for which they have volunteered for, either through their attendance at meetings or submission of public testimony? Is that the sort of qualification you would also?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would make a list. That and that would all be inclusive. There's no kind of like you got to be also a well-respected individual. I mean, you got to be kind of like a role model, even. Yeah.
Mahalo nui.
You bet.
Okay, so I'm up next. Let's get right into Hawaiian rights and cultural issues. And U.S. Congress passed a joint resolution signed by President Clinton apologizing to Native Hawaiians on behalf of the people of the United States for the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And we thought, well, we might go to your website and see some provisions or some attention being given to Hawaiian issues, but we couldn't really find things there. So now we're asking you about constitutionally protected traditional and customary rights, cultural resources, and what would you be doing to protect, acknowledge those, advance that?
Yeah.
Sort of
For sure. Well, first, let me just say that sometimes you take for granted who you are. So it's like, I mean, so my Portuguese side go back 5 generations, but my Hawaiian side go back 88 generations. And so, I'm part of this āina. And so, when we talk about Hawaiian Kingdom, yeah, you're right. I mean, President Clinton supposed to have made an apology because we are continually being illegally occupied. It is what it is. America, came up with they're using domestic law as it was international law, and so when they created our state, that was illegal already, and then that led to territorialism and then statehood. So I get it. I know why there's a lot of angry Hawaiians, who look back and say, man, it's kind of like what Russia was trying to do with Ukraine right now, trying to get Ukraine members to somehow feel okay with Russia just basically taking their sovereignty. But you fast forward, right, and here we are. So President Clinton apologized, and so at this point, I don't know how far back we can go in time. I don't. It's going to be hard to regain our kingdom, and so I just want to make sure that the least we could do is, you're right, Christina, protect Hawaiian rights, Hawaiian cultural practices. I practice. I used to practice ho'oponopono, which is a family therapy approach to bringing families together. And you know, I've in once a part of my life, I kind of experimenting with la'au lapa'au, which is our way of herbal medicine, if you will, and then lomi. So I mean, I understand Hawaiian practices, cultural practices. My family's very cultural. You know, my daughters dance hula and we play Hawaiian music, and so and then you know, and so you know, and that you know, but there's a continuum of us Hawaiians, right? You got Hawaiians who are up there, and you know, for TMT, for example, and they'll lay across the road. You know, I have cousins who have done that, and then I have cousins who are like, I think TMT is good for us, you know, and then I have family who's kind of in the middle. So, but yeah, those are issues that I think I can address head on because of my upbringing, because I'm Native Hawaiian, and I think I can engage the community, the Hawaiian community, better because of my experiences and who I am.
Thank you. Next question, Chuck.
Yes, Dr. Kimo, I'd like to kind of follow up. It's kind of related. The grubbing and grading ordinance, chapter 10 of the county code, people have been talking about revising that for a long time because, as you know, we have too many times we've got bulldozers out on the āina that are bulldozing cultural sites, burial sites without permits. And I think the fine is like $150 for, you know, violating, not getting a permit. And given that you can't reclaim those sites or the cultural landscape, would you support a grubbing and grading ordinance that has more regulations that would enable a better tracking of where and when earth moving activities are occurring, so that they couldn't be occurring, you know, off out of sight in a you know.
Yeah, sure. I'll entertain that. I'll explore that. I think that has a good intention. I think that helps protect our sacred areas, especially, you know. Yeah, I mean, the next life is important to us Native Hawaiians and a lot of cultures. You know, we value that, and we want to protect that, and that's our places. And a lot of times that's becomes our places of worship too. So it's like you're messing with our church, you know. So yeah, you got to be. Yeah, we want to make sure that you're just not willy-nilly grubbing and grading and moving earth without being conscious of that. So.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is, would you support specific revisions that would put into place practical regulations to help? Because we've got a lot of illegal grubbing and grading going on right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Been for years. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes. I would support it. I don't know to what detail, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Christine?
So I'm just going to jump right in on a series of questions or issues that are really important to me. Anybody that knows me, I'm really engaged in waste management, waste prevention issues. Also, you know, somewhat interested in tracking what's happening with wastewater. So since wastewater is such a big, huge issue, I think I'll start there. And I am going to assume that you're up to speed on what's been happening with the county and the consent decrees, and you know how the can has been kicked down the road for decades on these issues. So what do you suggest we do to improve our aging and non-existing wastewater infrastructure?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First, you know, I'd like to, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric around the prior administration kicking the can down the road, and the current administration has said they inherited a mess, you know, and all like that. But you know, I've worked under Mayors Billy Kinoy and Mayor Harry Kim, And this current administration also inherited some blessings too. In terms of funding, like the whole homeless, the decrease in homelessness, 28%, that was funding from the prior administration, or else that wouldn't have happened. Our roads that's being fixed, that was funding from the GET tax from the prior administration, that wouldn't have happened either. So our administration will not look back and blame the prior administrations. Let's just put it that way. But it is what it is, right? So there is deferred maintenance. Number one, wastewater. So this current administration promised that they would fix Keaukaha. That was the promise day one. The RFP hasn't gone out, or it's probably just gone out now to fix it. It's 3 years later. Kealikehi wastewater, we shouldn't have waited for a lawsuit from Earth Justice for that. We should have learned from Maui. Maui, they were being sued in the same way. They hired an attorney. They ended up fighting it for something like 10 years. It cost $7 million. Exactly how much it would have cost if they would have fixed it in the first place. You know what I mean? So with Kealikehi, I wouldn't fight it. I would fix it. So that's wastewater. Now with solid waste, you can do, I call it the 3 Bs. You can bury it, you can barge it, or you could burn it, right? But so we've been burying it right now, and I kind of jokingly say, that's going to be the 6th mountain, Mount Pu'ulu'ulu, and Waikoloa, because it's growing. We know we have to 2050, and then what are we going to do now? So you could barge it, but where would we want to barge it to? And we can continue our upstream efforts like reduce, reuse, and recycle. We could up that efforts, but we also know that recycling is not as popular as it was 5 years ago. We know that we have difficulty right now with what are we doing with our oil and the batteries? Where do we send that to? Sometimes we think we're solving a problem, we're creating another problem. So we're trying to look for alternative energy. So we got all these solar panels up, these windmills up, but then we don't know what to do with the end game. So our administration, we're going to be strong into alternative clean energy, but we're also going to pay attention. We want to make sure we're not creating another problem by trying to solve an original problem. So every alternative energy, idea should have an end game. We should have a decommission plan for all of those solar panels that in Waikoloa. Well, what are we going to do with that in 30 years? Windmills, we want to continue doing windmills. What are we going to do with that in 20 years? And so when we think about waste, right, we have to think long term. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm looking for directors who, I don't care where you're born, because 48% of us are born someplace else on this island. But I am kind of curious on where you're going to die. Because where you're going to die, where you're going to rest your iwi, and where you're going to spread your ashes, that tells me a lot about who you are. That tells me a lot of where you call home. And if you call Hawaii your home, then the decisions you make got to be long-term. And I'll be looking for directors and deputies with that mindset.
You're muted, Christine.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in here because of the transition you made. And it sounds like that was a pitch for waste to energy. Did I get that right?
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about waste to energy right now. I just know that the current proposal, I'm not satisfied with the current proposal. Anything that is toxic and goes in our air is not a good solution. It's one solution it's a problem trying to solve a problem. So I want to work with HULI PAC, with Sierra Club, with experts in the field to educate me on alternatives, right, to waste management, to how do we we cannot reuse, reduce, recycle. At some point we're still going to have extra waste, and then once it becomes too full for our landfill, what is the alternative? How do we, are there places with technologies now? Are there places, Singapore? I don't know. I started doing research. People started telling me that that you can have a waste to energy system and still be carbon neutral. If that's the case, I want to see it. I need to touch it, look at it. Is that real? If it's not, it ain't happening.
Back to wastewater, I'm not sure that I understood what your solution was that you were offering, but One thing that always seems to come down to is revenue. These
Yeah.
solutions are quite expensive. So as mayor, assuming you identify wastewater as a big problem and maybe even find a solution, how are you going to finance?
Yeah, so let me share with you. So first up, the budget's probably going to be $1 billion. If I get into office, it's 888 million right now. And so it is true. The recent inventory that was done. There was a study done, and it's just from all the way up to 2022, and they found that the biggest issue is that the county currently does not have a systematic plan to fix its current wastewater treatment facilities, to upgrade it, to renovate it, and such. And that's going to cost as high as $700 million. Okay, so when you look at the budget and you look at what we have, yeah, you're right. Is where's the revenue going to come from? So what they do is they put it on the other budget, which is the capital improvement budget, and that you're going to have to look for money for that, right? So and usually how they do it is they look for bonds. So, and here's the deal. So if you have $1 billion budget and you want to go get a bond, you cannot go over 15% of what's called the service debt. So 15% of $1 billion is 150 million. So if you owe 150 million to vendors or the public, then your bond rating drops. I believe the county is close to that 15%, which means their bond rating is not as strong as it should be. Now, the current administration might say it's the highest ever. It's not, because I know the budget, because I'm close to the county. I have colleagues who work for the county. They're on my team. They tell me. So you're gonna have to make sure that that's in place first, and that we have a high bond rating. But you cannot just use bonds to fund it. That's the thing. So we're gonna look at being a CEO in the nonprofit world. I know that there's other possible revenue streams that's better than bonds, that comes with maintenance as part of the package. So what's happening right now, you get a bond, you just get in the bond for the project, and it's just until the project ends. I'll be looking for a revenue program that includes the project build, but also includes lifetime maintenance. So if the bond is, so like if the percentage is a 3%, then we add a 0.5% for maintenance, and you do that at the get-go. And that's why this, administrations in the past, I don't know, they didn't have that foresight to include maintenance as part of the bond borrowing finance proposal. Our administration will take a look at that.
Okay. Thank you. Next question, Chuck.
Dr. Kimo, following up on that. So, are you aware of the freshwater council that's being led by the Hawaii Community Foundation under an EPA-funded program that's advancing water recycling projects? Are you aware of that? A little bit. Okay, so would you be willing to work with them on setting up water recycling at Kealakekee and our other wastewater treatment plants? Because that creates the potential for generation of sales of recycled water and generating some revenue from that. Would you be open to?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So I spent time. So I went to West Hawaii Explorations Academy. They asked me to do a couple of presentations to the students there, right? So I went to the Natural Energy Lab. Oh man, I gotta tell you, there's so much untapped opportunities there, especially with recycling water. Arabia, for example, is the driest nation in the world. I mean, they take their water from the ocean and they distill it and they use it as fresh water. They just don't know what to do with the salt, because you can't put the salt back in the ocean. It kills the fish. So, but we should explore something like that, and we should be the salt mecca of the world. Like, why are we bringing in salt? But why are we buying salt from? Why are we importing salt? Like, we can be the salt mecca, So I'd like to work with the Natural Energy Lab, with the recycling water folks to really make that an industry for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And have you thought about the wastewater enterprise fund that could stand apart and be treated as a separate entity and have separate accounting for its revenues and expenditures? And it would also allow for bonds to be issued by that authority, and it would also allow any sort of general wastewater bond that's associated with the county, debt, that service that you're talking about, and could actually be transferred and increase the ability of the county to issue bonds or get a better bond rating. So would you be open
Love
to
that. I
Okay.
love that. Of course, yes, I'll be open to that. In addition to other possible revenue streams, in addition to bonds, I think we've been relying on bonds far too long. We need to,
Mhm.
I know there's other ways to fund these projects that's more sustainable.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, back to you, Christine.
Oh, this is kind of fun. Okay, yeah, I have a question for you. Why are we importing salt? Kimo, why are we importing water in single-use plastic water bottles? So
I
one of
know.
the initiatives we're working on is to stop the importation of water in plastic water bottles. And, at the same time, we're bringing water from Norway and Fiji and upstate New York. We're taking our precious water and sending it out. It's like, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that's kind of crazy. So wonder if you have thoughts about that, or if you would actually support the momentum that's growing for a ban on single-use plastic water bottles.
Yeah, it's the single most contaminant. It's really bad. So I applaud your efforts. You might be even be known as the plastic bottle lady, I think. And that's and that's a good title, because that means you're a fighter for our Mother Earth, and I appreciate that, Christina. Yeah, we got to find a way we got to rid ourselves from these bottles or these plastics. It's killing us. I'm with you on that. I'll be open to explore programs and opportunities to get us to move from plastics, and then I've been looking at some other alternatives, and we just got to figure out a way to message it and get it out to the public, so the public actually sees it as compatible.
Okay, thank you.
Doc?
So, Dr. Kim, I'd like to switch to housing. So, a lot of people believe that we can somehow build our way out of the affordable housing crisis. But given that, there's the basic economic law of supply and demand, here in Hawaii, there's only so much of a supply we can provide. Meanwhile, we have global demand, which basically means it's infinite. There's always going to be an unlimited demand for housing here. So how do you think that we can solve our affordable housing crisis, given that big picture? Would you be, for instance, in support of rent control legislation, which at least would help to start keeping rents from, going so high? But in addition to that, how to bring new housing on that is affordable and that stays affordable, that has, title encumbrances or whatnot, that would keep it that way for moving forward, but at the same time allow people to own their homes, like a community land trust that where the land is shared and the homes are actually owned, and that people can actually make a 3% a year return or something like that. Are those sorts of ideas something that you'd be?
Certainly, all of those are great ideas. I just got off the phone with a friend of mine with Hawaiian Homes, and we're kind of joking, and we said, there's like about 10,000 Native Hawaiians. My dad, one of them, who's on the Hawaiian Homes list. And like, if you look at our island, we're 10,000 homes short, right, of somehow meeting that housing goal. I mean, that's 10,000 homes right there. If Hawaiian Homes can get Hawaiians on put Hawaiian lands back in Hawaiian hands and let them build the houses that they can afford, that might help, right? So that's on them. And then for us, like, what we can do as the county, we can try to deregulate in areas that make sense. I think housing is super overregulated. We're building homes for Florida standards, and we should really revisit that. We should consider the Ohana home. Governor Green just passed a bill that allows for 2 homes on an acre on the same property. You know, we should look at that, because those are homes that my kids could go in, you know, instead of clogging up the rental market. So like all of these ideas got to be considered. And if you really want to create the supply, you got to get those permits out. You know, we are holding the construction industry hostage by just keeping all those permits in for lack of staff, for a broken Epic system, you know, for over-regulation. And so, you know, to me, we should give these permits kind of provisional approval, and we, the county, take the burden of approving it, you know, while the construction agency can get started. Because if you keep the housing, the construction industry hostage, you're never going to fix the housing crisis, because you need homes, and we're not getting the permits out fast enough for them to get their home. So my ideas would be encourage Hawaiian Homes to get those, you know, lands in Hawaiian hands so they can get them off the list. That'll be a chunk right there. Continually work with the planning department, public works, to maybe look at the regulations so that homes are not as expensive, because when you take out some of the regulations, it gets less costly. And then get those permits out, because if the permits are holding, the cost of a home will continually be more expensive the longer you take to get those permits out, because of inflation and such. So there's all kinds of other angles. And also, I was watching Insights at PBS, and you know, one of the commentators said it doesn't matter how much homes you build, because the price of a home will always be 600,000, 500,000, because the housing market does not parallel the employment market. And so if you really want to have, he even went to say that he would not build any houses until we fix the housing market and the employment market until it's same. So people are addressing that now, and I'm open to ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you say, you know, deregulating, you know, getting rid of regulations, I think that's going towards the trying to build your way out. I think my question was more along the lines of bringing on homes, whether the developer has to be subsidized, or I mean, we have to make sure that, you know, constitutionally protected resources and rights, you know, are not trampled on, but actually creating affordable home projects that would stay affordable. In other words, building homes that are affordable versus market. And the permitting process could be related to those particular homes, but not to market homes.
Well, right. Well, my thing is, here's my plan for the Hawaiian Homes. Provide, and we could do the same thing with our residents. People just need land. You know, so it's like, if you provide a 1 acre lot to a Hawaiian family on the list, then you let them build the home that they can afford. Who are we to define affordability for a family, right? So if we already have land, county, state, you know, we should at least maybe allow folks to lease the land, and then let families decide affordability. Let them build the house that they can afford, whether it's a tiny home, a modular home, a factory built home, doesn't matter. You get to decide what's affordable for you, but what they need is land and infrastructure. You give people land, you give them wastewater, electric, they'll be happy to build a house that they can afford. Problem solved.
Mahalo.
I think if you take a snapshot of where we are right now, it seems like we have a problem right now with houselessness, particularly in the Kona and Hilo areas, and it seems like the solution being offered is sweeps. So I'm wondering if you're in favor of that solution. If not, then what alternatives might you offer?
Sure. So first, you know, I told the current administration, I shared with them, I don't like the word sweep because it implies rubbish. And these homeless people are not rubbish, they're family, right? They deserve better. And my interactions with the homeless as a psychologist, as a Bay Clinic CEO, doing outreach with homeless, these are not problem people. These are people with problems. And they're not homeless because they ran out of money. They're homeless because they ran out of relationships. Okay, they've burned bridges because of their addictions and their mental health issues. So if you really want to fix homelessness, you got to have a mental health system that works, and you got to address addictions. So homeless people, to me, just reflect to us where we fall short as a society. right? We fall short in housing. That's true, but we also fall short in mental health. And I want to be that mayor who's a mental health champion, because we've never had a mayor who championed mental health. And mental health many times are at the core of these, is at the root cause of these problems. So our administration will look at mental health, we'll look at addictions. And yes, you're right, you cannot do relocation efforts without any place to relocate them to. That's the big mistake that this administration has done. And I hope and pray that when we get elected, someone out there will say yes in my backyard, so that we can have some place to relocate these folks to, where we can have services and supports. But you need that first. And so, and here's the deal too, like I shared at the debate last night. You cannot just focus on the homeless. You got to also focus on the almost homeless. Because, I'm talking about the elderly person who's lives on a pension, their property tax increase, but their pension doesn't increase. So now they're one paycheck away from being homeless. Or the foster child who's aging out of the system, who has no place to go. Or the justice-involved person who's coming out of jail, who has no place to go. The domestic violent household where a partner wants to leave, but they have no program or no place to go. And also the veteran that has PTSD, that just needs support and cannot maintain housing because of their PTSD. So if you're just focusing on the homeless, but you're not focusing on the almost homeless, you will never end the homeless problem. And with me and my psychology background and my understanding of government, I bring two of those points to the table, which is super important.
Thank you. Christine, this will be your last question, and then we'll get one more from Chuck. Christine, you're on mute.
There you go again. Okay, my last question, I'm going to spend it wisely. And we've been hitting you with all these issues and problems. And what I want to know, Dr. Kimo, and some of this is based on my own experience because I live here on this island, networking around waste management issues, doing a lot of work with people at the state level, but also the national and the international level. And I am so inspired by the people that I meet here, the people who really want to make things better and do that selflessly. So I want to ask you, what inspires you? When you look around in the community and you see what's going on here, what inspires you? What's going to have you just rush into your job every day?
Yeah, my family inspires me, and most recently my wife had passed, and she has been my inspiration. So, I've reached a point in my life where, my 7 kids, I felt like I did the daddy duties. I never wanted to run for office earlier because I never wanted to be away from them. I wanted to make sure that I'm there at their sports events. I'm coaching them. I'm there at the PTA meetings. And so, it came a point where everybody wanted me to run for office in 2020. Billy wanted me to run in 2016. My kids were too young because my wife, she always believed that there's no other success that can compensate for failure in the home. And if everybody takes care of our homes and our kids, that's the best way to contribute to society. So I feel like I did my duty. My kids are older now, and so now I feel like I accomplished pretty much all of my dreams, and now I want to see if I can help our children accomplish their dreams. So I think my kids inspire me, my wife inspire me, and the people of Hawaii are super inspiring. This is the best place in the world to live. We embrace diversity. We're not perfect, but man, it's awesome to see a classroom filled with ethnically diverse, geographically diverse, religion diversity, and then the indigenous culture, Native Hawaiians who are so accepting and loving. It's just the best place to be. So I think the people, my family inspires me, and the people of the island inspires me. Thank you.
Chuck?
So Dr. Kimo, last but not least, we've dealt with the roof over the head, water, so food self-sufficiency. So Hawaii is one global crisis away from starvation because it imports most of its food. There's been a lot of talk about creating food self-sufficiency and food sovereignty. but little has been done to support the existing local small farmers and the development of future farmers. What will your administration do to grow the local agricultural economy and increase our island's food self-sufficiency, excuse me.
Love that, Chuck. Thank you. No, so yeah, I live with farmers. We talk about this all the time, and the farmer at the end of the day gotta make their profit. Farmers tell me, I have farmers on my team, and they say, Kimo, if I grow a tomato and I try to get it to the market, it takes me about 20 cents maybe just to grow it because of the fertilizer and the time it takes. But then I get it to the wholesaler, and they got to take their cut, which is, I don't know, 10% for refrigeration, maybe another 10% for distribution, and then the supermarket takes their cut. By the time I get mine, so that's why I'm a big fan of farmers markets. We need to have an adequate supply of farmers markets so our farmers can sell their produce directly to the consumer, and you kind of remove the middle person. I don't think it's going to hurt our supermarket industry too much. I think there's a nice balance there, and I would support something like that. Number two, we got to continue to educate our community. Every home, there's no reason why. I mean, if you live on land, you could plant a citrus tree, an ulu tree. I've planted. We got lemons, tangerines. I mean, every citrus tree you can imagine grows well. Ulu grows fast, and then you got our free mulching program. You can go get a mulch at once a month down there, and man, and that mulch is like gold. I got family in Hawaii Paradise Park on lava that's growing beautiful taro and ulu and sweet potato and pumpkins, you name it. So yes, you hit the nail on the head. If we don't start growing our own and paying attention to the fact that we're 5 days away from starvation, if all these imports stop, then we are going to be in trouble. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kimo Alameda. We're out of time, unfortunately. I think we'd all like to talk to you a little longer, but we have to limit these to 45 minutes, unfortunately. Thank you also to Chuck and Christine for conducting the interviews. One thing I always like to do and during these interviews at the end is encourage everybody to please go out and vote. Your vote is so important, and beyond that, please discuss the candidates with your friends and your family and find out what you have in common and encourage them to vote as well. And if everybody gets out and votes for their interests, then the change we're looking for can happen. HULI PAC, we're trying to build something that no other political establishment has seen before, a slate of pono leaders. For more information, please visit our website, hulihi.com, HULIHI.com. Thank you and have a great evening.